Joe Rogan Experience, JD Vance. I paused it right here for some reason. I know there was a reason. I have the transcript up here. Oh, yeah. So, okay. The clip that's been going around is one talking about corn dogs, which we're going to look at after we look at this. It's a long episode. I searched for Epstein to see if we could find any talk about that, and it turned out they did bring it up. So I'm not even sure what they've said. I think this just aired earlier today or something, or yesterday or something. So here, let's go.
Like blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, hey, like I'm going to take orders from you.
We're going to go larger screen here, guys. Just let me pause for a sec. There we go. That's a little bit. Yeah. All right.
No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Can you understand, though, why people would come to that conclusion, especially because of the Epstein Files?
What do you mean?
Well, the Epstein Files were supposed to be released, and there was a tremendous amount of resistance to those files being released, and that concerned a lot of people. Because if you're talking about very wealthy, powerful people that were engaged in crimes,
I see. So you're basically saying like the fear is that whatever's in the Epstein Files was used to blackmail like the administration into doing the Iran thing.
Or at the
That's not what he said. I'm not even sure precisely. We heard a little bit of what he was what led into this, but at least he brought it up. I agree. I mean, Rogan goes way off the deep end and all this stuff, and people are, there's a whole industry pointing out how FUBAR, his whatever it is, he's very prominent and powerful. I'm not sure he's currently the #1 podcast, but he's definitely been up there for some time, and he played a major role in the last election. He certainly scratches a lot of boomer itches and has a giant audience. But and he's in the documentary that I'm making, Tell the Truth, Jank. Check it out. But because he talked about the misinformation situation that I cover, or one of them. So no, he said JD Vance is saying that. Oh, you mean blackmailed into doing the Iran thing? Like, no, he raped teenage girls with his friends for decades. He was one of the most prominent customers / partners in a child rape ring, in a human trafficking ring, in a child trafficking ring. The leader of our country, everybody knows this. They're hiding it. The United States government, the full force of the United States government is dedicated to preventing the world from seeing evidence that the person in charge, the leader of the Republican Party, was raping children with his friends and trafficking young girls and boys. It's just normalized here. People interview Trump and they don't ask him about that. It's insane. How is this not the most important thing? I mean, that's one of the tragedies of it all, is that our culture is incredibly accommodating to people who abuse children. I think that's actually the root of so much of what's going on in this country, or in this society, and across the world, is the violence inflicted via colonial expansion and domination and exploitation. But along with that came treating children like property, which means that there's a permission structure for severe abuse and mild abuse and all sorts of other ways. On top of that, even if you don't explicitly do this sort of heinous things to kids, if you have to work all the time, and again, it's not blaming anybody, but this is one of the ways that the society does not prioritize the health of children, is that parents are gone at fucking work. You got to go work to afford money to pay a person to look after your kid. And that's incredibly expensive for some reason. It's incredibly expensive because rich people are expensive. All these things are completely affordable. If we don't have fucking rich people to fund, if we didn't have to go through the greed filter. And the excuse making we have for this, the fact that the Republican Party, and you could make similar judgments about the tolerance for this kind of heinous stuff within the Democratic Party too. There's a lot I could say about the Graham Plattner thing. I've just been watching a lot of the reactions to that, and I have a lot of thoughts to share. I'm not going to go down that right now, maybe someday. But especially the Republicans, they're a pedophile child rape ring. They're run by it. They sell it. They bounced out. I keep using the word bounced, but they went after Thomas Massey. I'm not even a big Thomas Massey defender, but he was the one guy on the GOP side actually making some big stink and making some moves to force this issue into the public spotlight, and he totally got trounced because AIPAC didn't want him in there anymore. There's a whole other dimension of the Epstein in terms of the power brokering that went on, and there certainly probably was blackmail from all this stuff. Why he had cameras everywhere and blah 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 blah. But it's never not embarrassing and humiliating and just like soul crushing that we live in a society where we have a guy who hails Hitler. And the world reacts by making him a trillionaire within a couple of years. There's no pressure. There's no peer pressure, peer group consequence to being a fucking Nazi. We don't live in a world that's hostile to Nazis like we should. Elon Musk is proof. It's the same thing with raping kids, the way Trump does, the way Trump has. It's just fucking disgusting. Let's just keep going. Sorry.
Very least, the people that were involved in the Epstein Files that didn't want them coming out had undue influence.
Well, again,
how do I make excuses? Why am I giving such a Southern accent? I don't know how to impersonate him. How do I make excuses for... He's such a phony.
Say this with all candor, we absolutely screwed up the comms of the Epstein Files.
Oh, the comms.
But I think the reason we screwed up the comms is because we were trying to hide something? No. I think the reason we screwed up the comms of the Epstein Files is one...
So if they weren't trying to hide something, why were they redacting everything they could? Why were they redacting the names of people who we still don't know? They're covering up and protecting their buddies, the rich, powerful people, across the political aisle, but certainly mostly on the right. You got that Chomsky in there, and some of the things they didn't redact it properly. A bunch of amateur hour fools over there, but they're hiding it. Trump is all over the fucking Epstein Files. He's in it. He's one of them. It's so disgusting, and it's going to come out eventually. I hope. I mean, although what's stopping them from just destroying evidence? Why would that's the whole point. That's the whole thing about power. It's something I think about a lot with the Young Turks project. Is that the point of being in the ruling class and the CEO class and the boss class, the upper class, the order giving class, the soft hands who never touch a tool class is impunity. It's power is about impunity and rules for others. There's that famous quote. I'm going to probably butcher it, but it's something like conservatism consists of the notion that there should be laws that bind but do not protect. There should be an out-group for whom laws bind but do not protect, and an in-group for whom laws protect but do not bind. So they're not held to the standards. They're not held to the rules. You can bust a union and then lie about being a union buster and avoid ever having to face a consequence for, classifying your workers in a way where they don't get benefits while they work, and you call them part-time. I'm getting too specific under the TOT stuff. I'll back off that for a sec, or for now. But it's the impunity. That's the whole thing. And in fact, the exercise of hypocrisy is only something that affects those who care about even the appearance of principles. Hypocrisy is proof that the system is working the way it's supposed to. Trump doesn't have to face any consequences. He has total authority, but he has zero responsibility. And that's what powerful people do. They build a system where they don't have to face accountability. They can operate with impunity. They can treat people like shit. They can do what these guys were doing. They can do the bullshit Cenk was doing. Nowhere near the same. It's even saying in the same breath, it's not fair. But that's still bad, in my opinion. We're still worthy of a documentary. The final third of it's going to have a pretty interesting reveal. I think people will be curious to see. And there's just this is what ruling class solidarity is. It's Rat King solidarity. It's these fucking assholes all just look out for each other. It's why Biden and Merrick Garland didn't do any aggressive prosecution of the Trump bullshit from January 6th. It took them forever to get going, and then they botched it all up. That's why Obama talked about looking back, looking forward, not back. When he talked about Wall Street, the criminals that destroyed society. You go steal $100, you're probably going to go to prison but these fuckers cost the society trillions, and had to get bailed out, and people lost their homes, and the foreclosure crisis, the housing home market crash in 2008 and all that shit. It wasn't a market crash per se, but it was devastating for small people. But the rich people got saved by Obama, and then he didn't prosecute anybody. So it's the impunity. It's getting away with whatever the fuck they want, which is why they resent rules and laws and people who try to hold them accountable. That's what the whole tension between all the isms is in terms of our political battlefield.
Pam Bondi said the client.
Pam Bondi's brother is a lawyer who brokers or brokered. I don't know if he's still there, but he was doing deals with people to get the bribes for the pardons. The whole fucking group of criminals, man.
List is on my desk, right?
Well, they had binders. They were standing in front.
But those binders were largely documents that had already been released, right? So let me try to.
Well, what was the purpose of that performative display of the Epstein?
I credit Joe Rogan for bringing this up. At least he's asking a very powerful person a question about a sensitive topic. I'll at least give him that. But watch JD here when he drops his head.
What was the purpose of that?
Oh, damn. Oh man. He interrupted. I had just thought of something that was good. This guy's very good at bullshitting. He's got no riz, no charisma. Unlike me.
Formative display of the Epstein Files, and she was saying there's tens of thousands of hours of film.
I don't know what the purpose of it was, but I know that the
purpose was to deceive and continue to protect the pedophiles who run society, who resent the world for not letting them continue North America as Epstein Island, and they had to retreat to an island. I mean, of course, there's still vast amounts of horrors happening on the greater continent.
The effect of it was to make people mistrust the entire effort. And what I think was
the lying and the putting out stuff that was already released and pretending it was and redacting things that had been out already. Yes, it made people mistrust the effort.
Look, I know Pam. I like Pam. I don't think there's anything malicious going on.
Oh, I see. The Pam. He's bringing up Pam to throw her under the bus. This is just, dirty politics. Stab her in the back.
I think Pam was trying to respond to the political moment. I think she overstated what we had and what we didn't have. And I think that she, got roasted for it publicly by a lot of people, including me. Like, you and I have talked about this a lot. I'm like one of the OG Epstein conspiracy theorists. I've probably gone down every single rabbit hole. We could go down most of them today. Look, the original sin of the Epstein investigation, and obviously I'm biased here, but it was not what Donald Trump and the administration did in 2025. It was, you have to go back to 2007, 2008. The original Alex Acosta investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, where he basically dropped the federal charges. I think,
and then Trump made him his labor secretary in Trump 1.0.
He ended up getting prosecuted on some sort of local thing. But the original warrant, you go to the original warrant back in 2008. What was he looking for? What was he allowed to look for? What were they collecting?
The only person who's been convicted of anything is Ghislaine Maxwell. There was a British guy lost his job or some shit, whatever the fuck. A couple of them, I think. But Ghislaine Maxwell, they moved her to a much cozier prison. They have prisons that aren't so terrible, and she gets to run the place. I haven't seen all the articles about that, but she's living in basically government-funded luxury at her club-fed prison. Donald Trump sent Todd Blanche, his personal lawyer, to intervene and to negotiate and to do. I don't think we've ever seen the contents of those meetings. And now Todd Blanche replaced Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, the president's personal fucking lawyer. The Attorney General is supposed to be a completely separate job. Like, that's one of those old norms that was part of a thing. There's I think her name was Loretta Lynch. It was Bill Clinton's Attorney General. I just recall some scandal where it was in Arizona. Clinton and her were at the same airport. It was considered a terrible thing. At least it was treated. And of course, with a lot of bad faith, with a lot of bull crap, media, right-wing freak out. The way they were about Clinton back then was nuts. If you weren't born back then, if you weren't alive, I was a teenager in the 90s. And he and Loretta Lynch had a conversation in public view on the tarmac of the airport. He walked up to her and they talked to her for a little bit, and then they separated. And like a small little conversation. In today's world, it would be nothing, but it was a big scandal, and it should be. Like the whole notion of judicial independence, because the Attorney General is the head of the Justice Department. They're the top prosecutor in the country. They direct an immense amount of power and resources, and it's completely inappropriate for there to be political interests injected into into any kind of prosecution, as of course there is now. There's vast and aggressive, completely corrupt, completely disgusting, and un-American. Give me a break. Prosecutions coming straight out of Donald Trump's political impulses through his attorney generals, covering up his pedophilia, for instance, brokering pardons of cocaine traffickers and other white collar criminals, and the January 6th guys, and all those other corrupt things. It's just completely off the charts, man.
Not looking at a broader conspiracy. So that happens. Okay, Epstein gets pinched. I think he goes to prison, or maybe this is when he was on house arrest. Mm-hmm. But like anything that existed from the 80s and 90s up to 2006, 2007, anything that existed that we didn't get back then was disappeared. Right. So like when people say, has what you've seen on the inside make you think that that Epstein never blackmailed people, or that Epstein never engaged in broader sex trafficking? No, absolutely not.
Human child trafficking. Calling it sex trafficking is bad, but it means teenagers and children.
What I have seen, and I've looked at most of the files, is
sure you have,
that there just wasn't dispositive evidence. And if that dispositive evidence ever existed, it was probably destroyed after 2006, 2007. Now, like again, in our defense, yes, was there some bitching and moaning, and was there some back and forth? Yes.
Dispositive means, in law and general terminology, dispositive means something that definitively settles or decides an issue, making further deliberation or evidence unnecessary. A dispositive fact, ruling, or piece of evidence has the power to determine the final outcome of a claim or case. So it wasn't conclusive enough for him, so they just stopped looking into it, is what he says. Bullshit. Total bullshit. It's also one of those legal jargon type words that bamboozles people who don't know what they're talking about, like me.
But we eventually collected 6 million documents as part of the effort. The president, people say the president was forced into releasing the documents. Like, again, the idea that Donald Trump could not have killed that legislation, especially with the United States Senate, is a joke. He absolutely could have killed it. What did he do? He actually said, nope, we're going to release these files. He thought, he was annoyed by the story. He was annoyed by the Democrats accusing him of doing things bad. By the way, like, do I think there is I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence that the President of the United States engaged in wrongdoing with minors. Ever.
Bullshit.
So, like when the president says the hoax,
there's some very credible stuff in there about drowning a baby or disposing of a baby in a Lake Michigan from a person who was interviewed multiple times. There was rape allegations in 2015 from an underage person, 2015, 2016, where the young person, or the woman that by then would have been older, withdrew it after threats and stuff came up. I don't have the entire inventory in my brain, but there's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of stuff that are in the Epstein files that suggest, not just directly from Trump, him writing that birthday card talking about how enigmas never age, that super creepy Epstein birthday card. Anybody associated with him should be fucking investigated. Drag Noam Chomsky out of the goddamn, library he lives in, and throw that fucking 92-year-old mummy in a prison cell for prove it, see what but there was all kinds of reasons to look into Trump's involvement with Epstein. This fucking liar. The GOP's a bunch of child rapist protecting jerks.
That's what
I hope they get that cyclosporea diarrhea.
Talking about is this democratic idea that he somehow was a pedophile. It's absurd. There's no evidence for it. Now, the Epstein law gets signed. We find 6 million documents. We find out 3 million of them are actually responsive, has something to do with the Epstein estate. We release all of them, with the exception of a few things that are like, the courts have said that we have to redact certain things or we can't release certain files. But like, we did release all these files. Did it take longer than it should have taken? Yes. But we did release these files. And again, the problem here is not like anything that's in the files or not in the files. The problem is, if you go back to the original investigation,
I can't move that image around the way it is in the browser. That's why it's kind of awkward. Oh, shit. Did I not turn? There you go. Yeah, I wanted to see his signature. Signature signed where the private follicles would be down there. And it's also like an oddly not woman body. It's kind of a adolescent-ish. It's kind of hard to just be conclusive, but look at this creep, man. Look at this fucking shit. That's not evidence that warrants further investigation. I'd call it dispositive, okay?
It was designed in a way that was way too narrow. If there was a broader conspiracy, and my view is that there probably was, the evidence that existed in 2007, that was the opportunity to get
So
it.
when you say there probably was a broader conspiracy, what exactly are you saying?
I think there are a few different options. I mean, look, man, I like you and I could literally do 2 episodes about this. I've gone on down to every rabbit hole. There's this funny New York Times story that's somewhat true, somewhat false, but where Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, says, well, we know JD's a conspiracy theorist on this. Like, I am, actually. I've gone down every
because he's in it. He's in on it. He is the experience. He is in the conspiracy. He's part of it.
Rabbit hole here. Look, so there's the theory that whether it was American intel or foreign intel, that Epstein was sort of using sort of the sex ring to blackmail rich and powerful people.
The child rape ring. It wasn't just sex. Did sex between adults occur? Probably. Did they also coerce and abuse young women who were over 18? Yes. But also plenty and well known to be much younger. There's super creepy stuff that I'll look for on Twitter as we hit play here, where it's talking about little. Okay.
There's that piece of it. I think there's a separate conspiracy that hasn't gotten covered as much, which is that Epstein actually. Okay, if you go back to the original Epstein guy was Les Wexner. Okay, who Columbus, Ohio.
That's the Victoria's Secret dude. Right? Just Lex Wexner to just make sure that I don't get that wrong. Yeah. Okay.
Was the wealthiest person in Ohio, maybe still is the wealthiest person in the state of Ohio. The thing that everybody in
here's one. Here, this is it. RT.com. Is that coming up on OBS here? Just making sure. Yeah. Someone wrote, "Your littlest girl was a little naughty. Thank you for a fun night. ... Your littlest girl was a little naughty." And they redacted the name of who sent this to Jeffrey Epstein. March 2014. Tuesday. Why don't we get to see that? Who the fuck sent that? Here's another one. New Brazilian just arrived. Sexy and cute. And then smiley 9YO or equal sign 9YO. Now, my impulse does that mean 9-year-old equals 9-year-old, or is that like a smiley with this? I'm trying to offer far more good faith than this deserves. They redacted the names. There's pictures attached. JPEGs, 5 of them. January 17, 2013. Best regards, name redacted. JD Vance is a fucking complicit.
Columbus, I lived there for a time, knew about the Wexner-Epstein relationship is that Epstein was his tax guy. That Epstein was like the genius at identifying weird tax strategies that would allow you to not have to pay taxes, but if you were being a little skeptical, would also say that it would allow Epstein to either blackmail people or to have a separate nexus of influence and control on rich and powerful people. And so I think there's an underreported, underexplored story of was Epstein like doing a lot of tax stuff that was not on the up and up, and is that one way in which he gained blackmail? It's not opposite of the sexual blackmail story, but in some ways it's you could imagine both things being true. I also just
the sexual blackmail could be as true as being great at taxes. What the fuck? Super wealthy too. It's just all such a scam. It's all just such a fucking scam. Just modern versions of marauding, raping, pillaging. Columbus pulled up in a boat. They started raping kids, and they never fucking stopped, man.
I think there's an element of he was a scumbag. He was a very sick person.
Described by Trump as best friends with Epstein for a very long time.
He built relationships with a lot of other rich and powerful people who just didn't have any real moral judgment about the fact the guy was obviously a scumbag. And again, to go back to defending Donald Trump, I know people don't want to hear this these days, but like, who was the guy? People say Donald Trump's blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein. Who was the guy who narked on Epstein to the Palm Beach police? That's in the Epstein Files.
Right.
It was Donald Trump.
He also kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago in 2005.
He kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. It's just, again,
loyal soldier Joe Rogan seems to be just like, oh yeah, that, yeah, right, yep, and he kicked him out. Like, I think there were criminal investigations happening. You turn on your co-conspirators. That's what that shit is. You think Donald Trump is the kind of guy that wouldn't suddenly do that against the person who supplies him with 13-year-olds to rape? Give me a fucking break.
It's obvious that Epstein was a sick man.
Yes, but
he was just sick. He just had a sickness. This is exactly this type of conversation. Even though we're in our weird world with modern podcast and telecom communication, internet, all over human, or especially American society throughout history, there's been this type of conversation where powerful rich guys either are in on it, but the other major part of it is making excuses, downplaying it, acting like it's no big deal, maintaining the permission structure to treat children like objects to just satisfy some sociopath's impulse. It's disgusting.
We mishandled the Epstein release. Guilty. We did mishandle, especially the communications of it.
What do you think should have been done?
I think that we should have just dropped everything at the very beginning. And like, obviously,
that makes it sound like they ever dropped anything. They never dropped everything. We should have just dropped it all at the beginning. That makes it sound like, oh, eventually they did. No, they didn't. This is bullshit, man.
It takes a little time to review the stuff, to find the stuff, to redact things where you have victims and so forth. But we should have just done it.
And perpetrators and Donald Trump.
Quickly as possible.
But some of the stuff that was redacted, some of the names that were redacted weren't victim.
All right. Okay. I'll give Rogan credit for that. Okay.
So, yeah, I've looked into this, and my understanding of this, having looked at a lot of this, but not all of it, is that it is sometimes hard to draw a distinction between victim and co-conspirator. And like, let me highlight this in a very sort of obvious way. Ro Khanna, who's been one of the loudest voices on the Epstein file. Well, he became very loud on the Epstein files the minute Donald Trump became president. Didn't seem to care about it during the Biden administration. He actually brought one of the Epstein victims, I think, to the State of the Union last year, or maybe it was the year before last. Well, like, that victim, and I'm not saying she wasn't a victim. I don't know anything about her particular case. She was also listed as a co-conspirator in some of these documents. Right, so there's an idea.
So his answer to why didn't you redact some of the names that weren't all victims was that, well, one of the victims was also a co-conspirator, was also in it. I don't know if what he's talking about has any truth to it at all. There are groups of victims who have, like, coalesced into advocacy groups to fight for this stuff. And when the guy who did it becomes president, it makes sense to use that in order to try to get leverage to try to gain the justice that was not served. And it's completely fair. If he gets to this or says it, he'd be right, that the Biden wanted to cover it up too. This stuff has been in the government's, coffers or, files, shelves for a very, very long time. And it takes time. So, I think there should be a legal process that should be respected, of course. But if you think that the billionaire child rape ring that provided this appetite, that supplied the appetite to, fulfilling the appetites for all these fucking freaks throughout the society at different levels of, on top of that, the blackmail and the Mossad connections and the whole sordid history of all these scumbags wasn't across the political spectrum, you're fooling yourself. I had a different thought in the middle of that sentence, so I lost track of it. But he brings up that one of the victims is the example of someone who was whose name was kept out of it. That's crazy.
The idea that some of the people who were engaged in the sex trafficking were also, facilitating it as well.
So they were incentivized to get more girls.
Yeah, but yes, that's right. But the idea is that it's hard to sort of.
I think it might have happened where someone who was victimized as a young girl, maybe in her teens, they don't always just go away after the first time. They might end up working in those things. Trump talked about how Epstein stole one of his girls who was a massage person at his club. Epstein's house in Florida is like down the street from Mar-a-Lago. These guys were neighbors, between 1 mile and 2 miles, I believe. And I think they tore down Epstein's property. I could be wrong, but they lived right by each other. These were like social circle pals. They were best friends. NBC did its stories about them partying together when he was just a playboy who people knew from Home Alone and other shit in the 80s. So like there's nuances and complexities to this stuff where someone might have been victimized and then groomed into working within the system, and in their 20s, in their teens, late teens, 20s, they grow into that and then eventually realize how that the inappropriateness of all that too. So this is just such diabolical fucking lying that this guy's doing.
Sometimes a little bit of a gray area between, some of the people who were alleged victims were also alleged co-conspirators. And so what DOJ tried to do was kind of make that judgment as best they could and release as much as possible.
Oh, right. Yeah. Some of the 70-year-old billionaire and centimillionaire dudes and rich fucks, they might have also been victims. Fuck off, dude. Kiss my ass. Suck the diarrhea out of my shorts.
It's clear that he was trying to get in contact with people that he felt were influential. It was clear that he was trying to get people to get together on the island and meet at parties. So there was something he was doing where he was trying to.
There's a lot. They talked about that a lot longer than I thought, so it took a bit more. I was kind of looking forward to keeping this under 2 hours. So let's push ahead, though. There's, oh gosh, Jesus, it's so horrid. Aren't you tired of talking about the people in power's penises? Isn't it getting fucking old? Can we please get some goddamn matriarchy up in this place so we can stop this shit? Among the many upsides of matriarchy is we'll probably won't have to constantly talk about the leader's junk all the fucking time. Not that I'd be against a lady who is horny and, okay, all right, let's not go. But Hank, what are you doing? But seriously, Jesus Christ, Clinton. I mean, if they're not wiener guys, they're murdering people constantly, or like Obama, he murdered Americans with drones. He bombed people, but he never had sex scandals. He put a basketball hoop on the tennis court, which is people are comparing. They bring that up when they talk about Trump's ballroom. Give me a break, man. Keep repeating phrases. It bothers me. So.